Hi Level 2, so I'm in my office. We've just had a lesson earlier on and I thought I'd come back to the office and just do a bit of a recap of the week for you and to help you get on with the next part of your journal. So I'm in my office with my friend, this one, who I know in the session today we did some really good work on. So I'm just going to put her or him down on my desk. I'm going to just talk you through some notes that I wrote about things that you should be remembering to put into your journal from this week. So this week we've looked at loads more technical vocabulary, so you should make sure that you're writing and using that technical vocabulary in the journal. So make sure you say the first time you use the word undulation what that actually means, and you gave us a nice recap of that earlier, some of you, so write that down or video it. Make sure that you talk this week. I think on Monday we looked at the idea of the magic distance, and I talked about how far away ideally from the audience you should be and how it's important that you don't get too close to the audience when you're wearing a full mask. So try to explain that a little bit more. You could, if you're doing a video journal, you could maybe might not work, but maybe you could put the mask on and maybe try moving it towards the camera or moving it back and saying how sort of the distance is important, or you can just sort of try explaining it in your own words. Okay, so that's another thing. The techniques that we looked at this week, obviously we've recapped undulation, and again I think if you haven't done this, you should either, if you're doing it on a video, you can get up and physically show the camera what an undulation is with your body. So stand up in neutral, focus, start with the exercise and follow it through, and that would be great if you can get a full, I can't quite get a full body shot here, but actually you could, yeah, I could stand up here and do a full undulation like this here, so I'm sure that you could figure it out how to do that at home. Or you can, if you're doing your journal written, why don't you draw it out? You know, why don't you try and draw it out and explain it? So, and then say, obviously that's a technique that you've learned, and why has that helped you? How are you going to use that in the future when it comes to creating characters? And if you've started to use it already in workshops with me, you might have put a mask on this week on Monday or Thursday and thought, oh, what undulation shall I work in today? And if you haven't done that yet, that's okay, because definitely next week you're going to be doing that. Then 7 states of tension, which we looked at on Monday. You don't have to go through in your journal every single state of tension and explain in detail what it's about, because obviously I've got that on a PowerPoint presentation. But what you can do is just say what you found in that session interesting. Did you find it easier to play tension state number 1 or tension state number 5, or and try to explain a little bit about how that technique and those exercises helped you, and how you think that in future you might use that technique in your work, especially when you're wearing a mask. How might it help to know that you can work in tension state number 7? And have you, I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the masks because they're all down here, and have you looked at a particular mask and wondered sort of naturally what tension state it is? So for example, you know, is this a tension state 2, or is it a tension state 5? You know, when you pick up a mask and you go to pull that face before you put it on, do you think, I wonder what tension state that mask is in? It doesn't mean that you can't change it once you've got the mask on, but have a think about that. So that's those ones. Then you can talk a little bit about the individual work that you've done in the mask. So the way that I side coached you, we call it hot seating, even though none of you were sat down, but every single one of you have now worn a mask on stage on your own and had me side coach you through some similar exercises to get you just learning some of the basics of wearing full masks. So you could talk about what you learned when you actually wore the mask. What was it like to wear it? How well did you breathe? How much could you see? How much could you hear? How much did you actually clock the audience and look at the audience? Or did you find those things hard? And if you did, why? But it's just as important to talk about what you learnt from watching your peers wearing the mask. In fact, I think, excuse me, you learn quite a lot more from watching your peers wear a mask than you do actually wearing it yourself. So in today's session, which Thursday morning, you all learn about a lot about this mask and how 3 different people wore it. Who was the first person? Reese was the first person, then Xander. So Reese's character with this mask was quite a high status character. He was really grumpy, had quite a lot of attitude, he came on and he looked quite annoyed with life in general. Then Xander put the mask on, excuse me, and he looked totally different. He looked quite shy, he looked quite low status, he looked a bit unsure of himself. And then Lottie put the mask on and she looked amazing. She looked like she was pouting, she looked like she had loads of attitude. So it should show you that the masks can be really, really flexible depending on who wears them and what they do physically in them. So I just described to you a little bit there, but you can say quite a lot in your own words or speak quite a lot about these masks and what you learn about them. So there's loads of different masks that we met, and lots of people wore a big range of them. So already you should be saying what you've learnt from watching others, say what you've learnt from being in them yourselves. Go back to the questions, which I'm just looking at on my computer screen. How has what I learned in today's session going to help my performance? So at the minute you won't be able to talk loads about the piece that you're going to start creating soon, but you will be able to say things about how you understand more about using naturalistic movements, how small things can really work well, like the checking of the pockets that everybody did. And we looked at when those of you that did it more successfully did it really subtly, so it's just a quick check my pockets. And those of you that maybe didn't work so well with it the first time because you did it quite theatrically or quite stylistically or stylized, that's a really big thing to learn at this stage. So that is definitely going to help you when you come to performing. How am I dealing with the demands and the difficulties of wearing a mask? So you can talk about breathing and not being able to see and being hot and being stuffy, but what about not being able to talk? So when I ask you, how did you get here today? You can't just say, well, I walked. And you can't go, well, I walked, because who would do that in real life? You would just say, in a full mask. So try and explain about how that is a different way of communicating when you're on stage. That's also what we mean by dealing with the demands and difficulties of wearing a mask on stage. Talk about the rules of wearing a mask. This in week 2 is a good time to recap the things that you should and shouldn't do, because it's certainly showing me what you're learning and how you're putting those things into practice. And if you're reminding yourself all the time, then you won't talk and you won't touch it and stuff. Make sure you're asking each other at the end of sessions, how did I work in that mask today? Was there one particular mask that I worked well in, and why? And remember, we don't talk about that mask really suiting somebody. We say that they worked well in it, or the mask worked well on them. And try and say why you think somebody worked well in a mask. It might be counter-masking. There could be lots of reasons why it worked well in them. Try to talk about avoiding large unnaturalistic gestures, and maybe make a note of times in the session where you've done that really well. I'm just going to click on what rehearsals have you done this week? I know you won't be talking about rehearsals yet, obviously, because you're not split into your groups. What new skills and techniques have you worked on? So counter-masking, 7 states of tension. We haven't yet done internal monologue, but we did touch on it on Monday from something, that's my telephone, we'll just ignore it. We talked about internal monologue. Xander brought something up about when he's wearing the mask, he's thinking all the time about what he would be saying if he didn't have it on. And I talked about how later on, probably next week, we'll start working with some interior monologue or inner monologue, which will help you when you've got the mask on. And yeah, I hope that's a good roundup. It's been a really good week, and we've done loads. Met loads of masks, done lots of different techniques and exercises, and had a really good discussion around the journal. So I really hope that you do, those of you that said that you would try to do the journal on video, you will actually go away and do it on video, and email me. My email's on StudentNet, remember, and just keep me updated with how the journal's going. And and the other thing I wanted to point out about a video journal, and it's I watched a bit of yours, Callum, and you're completely in silhouette in your video. So if you turn the camera, I've put my camera, my iPad here in front of me, and it's right in front of my window. If I were to turn it round now and I went like that, my window's behind me, and now I'm in silhouette, and it looks all a bit weird, and it doesn't look as good as if I turned it back here, bang, and then all of a sudden the light is in the right place. So you have to think about little things like that when you're filming, and where you are in your room, and have you got your notes. I made these notes before I started the video. Have you got things around you ready for the video? And then the other thing is, next week on Monday and Thursday, you've got your editing workshops. I've sorted them, I've organised them. So half of you are going to do it on Monday at 12:45, and the other half will be in a lesson with me. And then half of you will do it on Thursday at 12:45 upstairs in the IT suite. I'll show you where to go and everything. And a guy called Nick Brown is doing that with you. So once you learn about how you can edit, there'll be no stopping you. So have a good weekend, and bye.